Okay, thank you. So welcome, everybody. This is a virtual workshop, and we're here to talk a little bit about the waterfront project in downtown Oak Harbor. My name is David Kuhl. I'm the Development Services Director for the City of Oak Harbor. And we're going to be going through a format tonight that will be basically all virtual. And it's shut down a little bit so that there won't be a chat function. So the folks out there won't be able to chat directly with us. But we have sent out a form for everybody to fill out questions that you've had before you, when you registered. So we will answer all those questions towards the end of the presentation today. The next step we're going to take is Claire Weston will give background on the work that's been done so far. And then Cascadia, our consultant, Alex, will be jumping in there to help us. And they'll spend about 50 minutes, that's 50 minutes, to talk a little bit about the land use economics of the project. After that, I'll go through the questions and answers. We'll have different people participating in answering some of the questions that all of those of you who have participated with questions. We had a few questions late today, and we'll try and answer those as well. From there, Claire will, actually it'll be Lou Jane from the Center for Land Creation and Recycling, and she'll close it out. So thank you, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started.
Thank you, David. I'm thrilled to be joining you all this evening. I just wanted to take a moment to go over some of what's been accomplished so far in this planning process. So for those of you who may have joined us at workshop number 1 and workshop number 2, and even for those of you who were not able to join us at those workshops, and this is your first workshop with us, I just wanted to provide you with a little bit of background on what's been accomplished so far, where we are in this planning process for the waterfront district in Oak Harbor, and what the next steps are. So first of all, my name is Claire Weston. I'm the Senior Programs Manager at the Center for Creative Land Recycling, and we are a national nonprofit that is supporting the City of Oak Harbor. Imagine this vision for the waterfront district. And we're joined today by our partners at Cascadia Partners, who will be talking about the market feasibility study element of this project. So, getting started here. I just wanted to remind everybody of a couple of our objectives and where those objectives have been addressed in the planning process. So now, objective number 1 was really to refine the current vision that the city has developed for the City of Oak Harbor to accommodate growth demands and accommodate community needs and preferences. So what that meant for the first workshop on February 27th, February 27th, was really about documenting the community's needs, preferences, and concerns, hearing from all of you about what you want to see your community become and what concerns you have about that transformation. So that's what the first workshop really amounted to. And then from that workshop, we developed a summary report, taking all of that input and feedback and summarizing it into this report to share with the folks at the City of Oak Harbor to start thinking about what that feedback and preferences might look like when it comes to design. Okay, that's the really fun part, thinking about what these redeveloped sites could really look like in the community. So from that, we then moved on to workshop 2, which was held on April 17th. And the objective here was to use your input, use your feedback to create a feasible vision that is responsive to your input and feedback, your needs and your preferences. So we used that opportunity on workshop 2 to share some designs with you, share some concepts, and get some reactions on those designs and concepts. So what tonight is all about is really digging into the feasibility portion of the project, really looking at the constraints to the project, and we're really going to be diving into the market feasibility and how to see this redevelopment realized in a way that's effective and realistic. So that's what we're going to be covering tonight. And so here's the entire timeline, and here's where we're going from here. So we're down here, May 15th, deliver the market feasibility analysis. That's what Alex and Allison will be doing for you shortly. And then from there, our next step is to deliver a summary report with findings and action items for plan implementation. So it's a really exciting and fairly accelerated process. Often this kind of process can take a year or more, and we're really crunching that timeline down to get things moving for the city of Oak Harbor. So with that, that's your bit of background. I'd love to hand it over to our partners at Cascadia Partners, Allison and Alex.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to present my screen. There we are. Okay, my name is Alex Joyce. I'm the managing partner at Cascadia Partners, and I oversee our development services and downtown redevelopment strategy work. And with me tonight is Allison Platt. We're both going to be presenting some of our findings related to the waterfront plan and specifically around real estate feasibility. Allie has a background in working for urban renewal and special purpose districts around Oregon, and brings a lot of experience in downtown redevelopment and placemaking. So we'll be handing the baton back and forth, going through some of this. Just I want to frame up tonight's discussion a little bit so we kind of understand the topics that we're going to cover, and then drill down into specific aspects of feasibility. What are the real opportunities and challenges when it comes to redevelopment within downtown Oak Harbor? And then what are the tools in the toolbox? What are the ways that cities like Oak Harbor can boost the opportunity for redevelopment of desired development types? So covering a variety of those tools in the toolbox. So just to reiterate the vision, we're trying to achieve a vibrant and mixed-use urban village. Well, what is an urban village, and what are the components of an urban village? It really has several different components. There's the high-quality public realm, so great streets, great parks, capitalizing on the beautiful waterfront there, and linking the development and the redevelopment, existing businesses and redeveloped sites to all of those beautiful public spaces. So high-quality public spaces linked with vibrant commercial spaces and new residences as well. So active ground floors, pedestrian and oriented development, lots of public art and unique civic features that help Oak Harbor become a special, grow its downtown into an even more special place. We heard loud and clear that orientation towards the water was a primary objective for the urban village vision. And all of these ingredients taken together are attractive and attract residences from the surrounding community, but also lots of visitor activity and investment, importantly. So we've gone through some renderings of the former gas station site as part of this study area. And as you can see, there's a high quality buildings, but also high quality public spaces. So both of those ingredients are important. The parks, the streets, the civic spaces and art, as well as the architecture, the development architecture. In addition, a strong linkage between what happens for the residents, the development, and the commercial ground floor linked directly to the water and to parks. So a real interconnectedness of the parks, the waterfront, and the development. Now, oftentimes when communities think about how do you want to achieve this kind of redevelopment, this mixed-use redevelopment, when there's a focus on the outcomes, there's a natural tendency to sort of zero in on a single site and think about how can that site become that type of mixed-use development with residences above and active ground floor uses below. But really, it's important to recognize that real estate feasibility is not site by site. Real estate feasibility is something that is a district phenomenon. A district is either feasible for real estate development and investment, or it's not. Oftentimes, one site may be similarly situated, similarly feasible. So zooming out a little bit and understanding what are the tools that ought to be implemented at the district scale to raise the general conditions of development feasibility? And then what are the tools that really do relate to a single site? And thinking holistically about all of those tools is important. It's a package of actions. There's no silver bullets like most things in life. It takes a package of actions all working together to achieve these kinds of ambitious outcomes. So we have our opportunity site that sits within this larger waterfront district, right? And we're going to be talking about tools and strategies that we hope can grow the general conditions of real estate feasibility across the entire district. And generally speaking, those strategies have a high multiplier effect. They are more economical than just pouring a bunch of subsidy into achieving feasibility on a single site. So raising a rising tide that can lift many boats, not just a single site. So we want to talk a little bit about tonight. We want to talk about what's possible. So what are the specific challenges that are faced when contemplating a mixed-use redevelopment in downtown? What are the market challenges? What are the regulatory challenges? And then what are some of the first places to start when we're talking about a multi-pronged strategy for reinvestment and redevelopment? We're going to walk through each of these. Ali, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about feasibility.
Great. Thanks, Alex. As Alex mentioned, my name is Allison Platt. I'm a senior associate with Cascadia Partners, and I'll be kind of talking through some of the feasibility lessons learned that we've gathered through this analysis. So both opportunities and challenges for the urban village envisioned in Oak Harbor. So there's both local challenges and national market challenges that pose barriers to development feasibility for Oak Harbor, but also that aren't just limited or only exclusive to happening in Oak Harbor. But some of those local challenges is that a mixed-use development is a new development type for Oak Harbor. There's not currently a mixed-use development in the local market, so it makes it challenging for developers to find comparable appraisals, which can make financing a new product type very difficult. There are also limited labor availability in the area or on the island that can drive up development costs, and as well as high on or offsite costs, which can kill a project's feasibility. And these are all things that we gathered through interviews with local developers to help us identify some of those local challenges. In addition, we're in a really challenging market at a national scale for development to pencil. We're seeing extremely high interest rates. Tariffs are continuing to increase costs, particularly in the construction industry. And then rental restrictions and building code regulations are driving up costs in Washington. That's not exclusive to Oak Harbor. But it's not all negative. We did also hear some positives or some strengths about the Oak Harbor market in some of those developer interviews and getting feedback from local developers. So Oak Harbor does have an active multifamily market, and there's several multifamily projects that are under construction, are currently being reviewed by planning and building, or getting close to receiving final permit approval, including several or a large subsidized project at Camas Flats, several market rate projects at Crosby Trace. So that's just to name a few, but there's definitely more active multifamily market happening in the area. We also heard from developers that Oak Harbor likely has the strongest potential for both mixed use and multifamily on the island. Vacancy rates are currently low, which helps support development feasibility. And most of the city's core area and the area identified for the urban village is located within a federal opportunity zone designation, which provides tax incentives and benefits for developers looking to develop in those areas. So costs and needed rental and lease rates that are shown on this slide are based on local projects and, again, information that we gathered through developer interviews. What we found is that costs are high to build in Oak Harbor, particularly for mixed-use development. That's not uncommon, and it's not something that we're hearing that in multiple markets. That's not just exclusive to Oak Harbor. But in order to make a project pencil, or to be feasible in the Oak Harbor market, we heard that residential and commercial rates need to be much higher than what is currently being realized in the market. And that doesn't acknowledge that rental rates are still unattainable for many residents, but that just the difference between how much a project would need to charge to cover the cost to build a project, there's a significant gap. And so it further exacerbates the need for the city to look at different development offerings, incentives, and tools to help bridge that gap, while also considering ways to keep rental rates at an affordable level for residents, both current and future. Another thing that we learned from talking to local developers and thinking about market conditions is that the residential market in Oak Harbor is what's really going to drive mixed use development. Commercial is a really challenging market, particularly since the pandemic. Commercial is renting more slowly and it's more expensive to build. We heard from developers that we interviewed that smaller commercial spaces may be feasible, but thinking through city regulations that may require a certain percentage of the ground floor or larger commercial spaces on the ground floor may not be feasible, particularly in this pioneering market time. The office market is essentially dead locally, not to say that there isn't some office demand, but the ability to construct new office space and be able to rent that out is very challenging. And so mixed use development in particular would need significant incentives and public participation to make a project feasible under current conditions today. Lastly, brownfield conditions in Oak Harbor can add costs for future development, but the city can and already is helping to mitigate those concerns and expenses. So in some of the area of Oak Harbor, we heard that the land is actually fill land, and that can result in higher construction costs due to soil quality conditions for local developers. And so understanding the site's environmental assessment and the status of that environmental assessment is crucial for a developer to finance and have confidence in moving forward with the site. Brownfield risk can be manageable if there's clarity and known conditions for that site. But the city is already taking a proactive approach, particularly at the former gas station site, to help mitigate and ease some of these concerns for potential developers.
Great, thanks, Allison. So we don't want to leave anyone feeling like there aren't any solutions to the significant headwinds that face development. There are a variety of tools in the tool belt, and just to repeat, it often takes multiple tools all working at once in order to achieve the job. And so we're going to step through several categories of those tools that are instrumental in helping to raise the market conditions and get projects like those contemplated closer to feasibility. So development can be infeasible for a variety of reasons, right? It can be there can be zoning barriers, there can be a lack of quality infrastructure and amenities that makes an area less desirable, some areas less desirable than others, or more costly to serve with infrastructure, to upgrade infrastructure. General financial headwinds, like all the things we've talked about, right? But there's also a lot of things that the public sector can do. Cities like Oak Harbor have options to be proactive and to help shape the market and to help development achieve market feasibility. So let's talk about some of those. So policy adjustments, right? There's an arena of policy changes, placemaking investments. If you think about it, market demand really is the function of desirability. How many people want to be somewhere? That is really what market feasibility is all about. So raising the general quality through placemaking investments is one key strategy. Incentives. Right, projects that are close but not quite there with some helpful incentives can get over the line and become feasible when they otherwise might not be feasible. And then for specific sites, to attract specific types of development and development partnerships, there's a tool called development offerings that we'll talk through. It's a strategy that cities can use to partner with private or nonprofit partners to develop specific sites. So let's dig into some of these. So policy. So zoning, zoning really regulates what you can build, what you can't build, and also how much of that thing you can build, the size and the bulk. There's design standards that can be within zoning standards, and those kind of things. So sort of the form and function of areas like downtown. There's a lot of zone districts, different zone districts within a short walk of the downtown study area. But most of the downtown is comprised of community commercial or C3 zone and central business district. Those two zones have different allowances. So community commercial allows horizontal and mixed use, so you can stack uses or you can build them side by side. There's no density regulations in that zone district, but there is a maximum height of 35 feet, which is about 3 stories. The central business district, on the other hand, allows for vertical mixed use, right? So you have to stack uses if you want to have multiple uses. There's also no maximum density, and it has some increased height allowances under certain conditions that'll get you up to what could be a 4 or maybe a 5-story building. Okay, so we've drilled down on a couple of different strategies when you think about how can you best align your zoning to your vision? What are the things you ought to think about, the ways you ought to think about, and some specific ideas? There's 3 general categories: make urban villages, and the types of mixed-use development that you want to see in your urban village. Make that as easy as possible. Make that type of development allowed and encouraged within the zoning. If it's not allowed and encouraged, you got a misalignment between your vision and your policy. Encourage more near-term development in the district. So, as we've talked about, vertical mixed use is expensive. It's only gotten more expensive and more challenging as costs have continued to rise. But are there other types of development that can be really additive to the downtown area and can help you move closer to the vibrant mix of uses that you want to see in the district? We'll talk about a few of those strategies. And then what happens in the surrounding neighborhoods can have a big influence on the type of foot traffic that you could see in the downtown core. So not thinking only about what's allowed within the downtown, but I'm thinking also about what kinds of housing are allowed in the adjacent neighborhoods is an important strategy as well. Okay, so reducing the barriers to the type of development you want to see. We have some specific examples there. So within the urban or within the zone districts, off-street parking is an extremely costly part of development that oftentimes doesn't generate any rent. And so it is a cost that gets added on, but unlike adding an additional apartment, adding an additional parking space oftentimes doesn't come with any additional revenue. So thinking as a district about how you can maximize the potential parking pool, the parking reservoir of the entire district through clever striping on streets and very efficient striping on streets to maximize the amount of parking within downtown can help to reduce the market need for off-street parking, which as you get more dense becomes very expensive. Structured parking is over $30,000 per space. And so, having a cost that adds, or having a parking space that adds $30,000 for or more, or $60,000 if you're adding 2 spaces to each apartment, you can see why that becomes quite infeasible quite quickly. So allowing for the district to supply more parking so that the market doesn't have to supply all of its parking needs off street is an important strategy. Increasing the height, right? So 4 and 5-story buildings are some of the most cost efficient because of some of the considerations of building code. Within so for a standalone multifamily building or apartment building, a 4-story building is very cost effective. It allows you to get a very efficient number of units and serve those with stairwells and elevators in a very cost effective way. In a mixed use environment where you want to have ground floor retail space, those 4 floors of apartments over a larger, taller ground floor retail space, so like 4 stories over a single story or 5-story development type, is a very cost efficient development type. So thinking about how you can align regulations to achieve cost effective development or building outcomes is an important strategy, and increasing those height allowances to 5-story stories would be one such example. So when you have design standards, a lot of communities like to have design standards to ensure some level of quality. Implementing design standards very carefully, right? So that you can balance getting high quality outcomes without adding overly burdensome or overly costly requirements is an important process to go through. So making sure they're clear, they're objective, they're measurable, they're understandable, and they are balanced to achieve what you need for quality without going overboard and really impacting the feasibility of development. That's a process in and of itself. So encouraging more near-term development within the district. So one of the zones allows uses, that are next to one another. So an apartment next to a commercial building, say, which is sometimes easier to finance. But there's also this idea of adaptive reuse. So adaptively reusing or reusing existing buildings can be a very cost-effective strategy, right? That can result in new commercial space that's much more affordable in many cases to local and small businesses. So reusing what you have in some way, shape, or form. So if you have a commercial space, say for instance, and maybe redeveloping an apartment building on a larger site where there's a significant amount of surface parking, say for instance. So that would be a horizontal reuse strategy. Keep and improve the existing commercial space, adapt it for modern convenience, adding pedestrian amenities, maybe some outdoor seating, but reusing it is both environmentally friendly, but also can result in more cost-effective space that can help you retain local tenants. And that can be an interim strategy. You can adapt older spaces for the time being, create more vibrancy downtown, and then as the market improves and desirability improves, those sites can then redevelop further down the line. So allowing for horizontal mixed use, so apartments next to commercial spaces, and then incentivizing, going through your permitting process and your evaluating your permitting process, your zoning code to make sure that you are allowing for a pretty streamlined and efficient reuse of existing buildings in ways that can be quite cool. If a front surface parking lot becomes more of a plaza space with outdoor dining and things like that, it can be a pretty welcoming and vibrant place. Making sure those kinds of quick wins are possible and feasible within the code is important. So also allowing more middle housing in the surrounding neighborhood, right? So in markets like Oak Harbor, oftentimes middle housing types, so townhomes, cottage cluster, small lot single family, or even smaller apartment buildings that maybe have 3 or 4 units in them or 6 or 7 units in them. Those kinds of more modest density residential housing types, they can be easier to finance. They can be less risky. And they can oftentimes fit the character of some of the neighborhoods that are adjacent to downtown more easily, compared to the feasibility challenges of stacking brand new higher cost apartments over a very nice ground floor retail. Those kind of buildings are challenging, but these other middle housing types can help, can be feasible, and they can also help to drive foot traffic in the downtown area. Adding residences immediately around downtown is a great near-term strategy for adding foot traffic and customers in the market area of downtown. So specifically expanding permitted housing types within the R1 zone to encourage more density and a wider variety of housing types. Increasing the maximum density allowed in R2 and R4. So just allowing you to get a couple extra units on there on those kind of lots can really encourage middle housing types that are will add more people and more customers downtown, but also result in smaller units oftentimes that are more attainable for the community. Ali, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about placemaking strategies.
Great. So as Alex mentioned, there's sort of a multi-prong approach to unlocking the potential of an urban village or a district. So Alex just kind of gave an overview of some of those policy and zoning regulation tools. I'm going to talk through placemaking and incentives. So placemaking really helps us unlock the potential in the public realm or public spaces. So think public right-of-ways, the streets, areas that might be between buildings. Oftentimes parks are another example of the public realm. And we're really trying to, with placemaking, we're really trying to create a lively, active area that draws more people to the district to support local businesses, and really thinking through tactically and starting incrementally is really important with placemaking. Cities don't have just millions of dollars sitting in the bank ready to unlock the potential of their public spaces. So how do we do that in an incremental approach and slowly build momentum are some of the things that we'll talk through in this placemaking, through some of these placemaking slides. So there's a few key ingredients to placemaking. As Alex mentioned, allowing for more housing nearby and within the district helps bring more local residents and customers to the area, and will also help attract more activity, more eyes on the street at all times of the day, bring more people that are living there that want to start local businesses. Thriving local businesses is another key ingredient to creating a vibrant district. So allowing for that mix of uses, both residential and commercial, retail next to each other, so that you can create both kind of a housing and business oriented district. And then as we kind of talk through some of those placemaking components, really creating active gathering spaces. And this could include adding benches, places for people to linger, programmed events, even if it's a weekend conversion of a parking lot or an alley into some type of market or food cart lot, right? That brings a lot more activity to that site or that area, even if it's done temporarily. It just draws more activity and attention to the area. And then lastly, creating walkable and safe streets. So complete streets with multimodal connections, safe crossings, places that you feel comfortable, right? Bringing your kids, your family to walk around and enjoy the district. Some key recommendations that we have for Oak Harbor and thinking about how to create an urban village and destination, and that will help, how placemaking can help both preserve and maintain Oak Harbor's existing character, is really identifying a central heart or a core area to concentrate activity within the waterfront and urban village. Second, thinking through how to create flexible and adaptable spaces that can be activated and programmed at a low cost, right? So partnering with local businesses, partnering with local organizations to host and program events near that central heart or that central core. Use low cost and temporary materials. I don't know if anyone has seen, there's a kind of a famous planner that was influential in converting Times Square to be pedestrian oriented. And when they first piloted the program, they bought a ton of lawn chairs, like at a Target or something the night before, because they're like, we need places for people to sit, right? So thinking through even just low cost and temporary materials that you can bring in to help activate a space. Provide interactive art and games, really make these spaces family friendly, interactive, to help draw attention to them. And then lastly, thinking about how to activate and connect the district. So how do you integrate the central core, the heart, with surrounding retail and food spaces, ensuring family-friendly and engaging space, and connecting this district to existing neighborhood areas through those, through those safe crossings, safe street connections, to make sure that people can easily access the area. So some ideas for a central heart in the district is really creating kind of that focused area of activity, and some areas for Oak Harbor to potentially consider is that Southeast Pioneer Way, Southeast Bayshore Drive, or Midway Boulevard. So we've kind of just identified some potential locations for where a Central Heart could be located in this graphic. And then bringing life to the space doesn't, as I mentioned, it doesn't need to be an $8 million project from day one. Don't wait for your destinations to be built. Think about how you can create destinations within the existing space through those low cost activation items, such as programming events, such as pop-up markets, farmers markets, parades, block parties. Look at how you partner with nearby businesses with activating storefronts, outdoor dining, and parklets. There's a ton of case studies of cities in downtown areas that have done this, whether they do, kind of a mimosa Sunday, or like each business does a mimosa contest, or think about how do you partner with nearby businesses to help bring activity to them as well through some of these pop-up events. And then consider converting Dock Street, Southeast Bayshore Drive, or Southeast Pioneer Way to car-free streets. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the street needs to be car-free all the time. Those can also be done on temporary or pop-up basis as well. And then lastly, activation and connection. So really focus on safe and engaging streetscapes that ensure connectivity within the district, but also between the district and surrounding neighborhoods. And ways that you can do that is looking at reducing street widths or right-of-way widths, thinking about tucking in parking. So really take advantage of streets as one of the city's biggest assets. Squeeze every last parking space possible out of your downtown streets after you've claimed space for pedestrian activity. And then use a very active approach to parking management. If we're going to be driving more people to the district, we also need to be thinking about how we're going to manage parking to make sure that people can access the space over time. And lastly, kind of putting all of those placemaking elements together, these are ways that we can bring people and energy to the district without a huge time and financial investment to really set the stage for urban village development and feasibility.
Great.
So a couple just different examples of kind of what placemaking can do. Just thinking through Pioneer Way already within Oak Harbor. Pioneer Way East is a very different experience than Pioneer Way West. And a lot of that has to do with the way that the street is designed, the buildings that are there to kind of hug the right-of-way. So just kind of thinking through a local example of how can some of that transformation of the public realm, how does it already play out within your city? And we've thought about kind of how do we take the lessons that we learn from Pioneer Way and apply them to Bayshore Drive. So currently Bayshore Drive, 2 lanes in both directions, wide shoulders and narrow sidewalks. We think that there's opportunity to reevaluate what that street could look like to really improve and enhance on the waterfront and connect it to the downtown. So the right example is just a potential option of what Bayshore could look like, nothing that the city is actively committed to, but gives an example of how you could really engage that waterfront, potentially even consider sort of a boardwalk feature on that waterfront side to really enhance the public realm while still providing plenty of parking and vehicular access through the district. And these are just some examples of other waterfront urban villages that could be looked at as a local resource. So the Riverwalk in Astoria, Oregon has kind of a similar street design as that we showed that could be feasible for Bayshore. And then this example from outside of Seattle is another just waterfront urban village that could provide lessons learned for Oak Harbor. Okay, so moving into kind of the third tool to help unlock potential for the urban village, I'm going to talk a little bit about different incentives that could be available for the city to explore. So development incentives both help the city create opportunities for property owners to provide the desired development that the city wants to see. And it's a beneficial way for developers to provide the things that the city wants to see. So some specific incentives that we see in Washington are tax exemptions, specifically the multifamily tax exemption, the use of tax increment financing or urban renewal, as well as fee waivers or fee deferrals for system development charges or fees on development to support infrastructure investments. Great. So when costs outweigh revenue for developments, those projects are infeasible. And when we provide incentives, that means that the costs or the revenue, right, becomes heavier than the cost, or the costs become lighter. And that really helps tip projects into a point of feasibility. And so development incentives are a critical tool to overcoming some of the market challenges that we talked about at the beginning of the presentation. And additionally, they can support housing at a range of income levels to help mitigate displacement and provide a mix of housing options for a mix of different income levels, support affordable housing and affordability. And there's a variety of tools worth implementing, some of which Oak Harbor has in place or is considering, and some of which they don't have in place. So we recommend that Oak Harbor consider adding additional tools to their toolbox. We understand that Oak Harbor is currently considering adopting a multifamily tax exemption program, which provides a tax incentive to encourage the development of multifamily and affordable housing. We've heard from talking to other cities in the state that this is single-handedly the most effective tool for supporting urban village goals. Bellingham, Washington has a variety of urban villages that they've identified to accommodate about 30% of their housing need over time. And they're currently meeting that 30% housing goal. And they've mentioned specifically the multifamily tax exemption program, specifically geared towards an 8-year tax exemption that isn't required to be for affordable housing, has been a critical tool to help them realize their urban village goals. Tax increment financing in urban renewal areas, those two words mean the same thing, is a public tool that uses an increase in property taxes from property value growth or development occurring on a property to help fund and invest in development within a specific geography. And so this is a tool specifically used for infrastructure and placemaking investments by a lot of cities in Washington that we highly recommend Oak Harbor consider exploring and creating an urban renewal area for the urban village here. In addition, fee waivers, infrastructure, and brownfield grants are all things that the city could explore to help support development feasibility and provide incentives to developers.
All right, thank you, Ali, for talking through the incentives and the placemaking ingredients and tools that we've got. The last, but certainly not least, is I want to talk about development offerings. So I mentioned that most of what we have described thus far are tools and strategies that can help lift the entire district's market feasibility. But there are a class of tools that relate to how do we actually catalyze the redevelopment of a site, of a single site, much like the opportunity site that we have been studying as part of this process. And that really is a development offering process. So if there's a site that the city owns or controls, they have the ability to understand that site and present it to the market to find a market developer or a nonprofit developer or both even to help them realize their development outcomes. So because of the headwinds that are faced in the market right now for the types of mixed use development that the city would like to see, a development offering process can be a pretty important way to engage with the private sector, engage with nonprofit partners, bundle up a package of incentives and achieve the types of mixed use development outcomes that the market would not be able to achieve on its own. So it's a public-private partnership. It's a tool to achieve public-private partnership outcomes, development outcomes. And specifically, we see an opportunity right now to achieve a mixed-use building with both affordable housing and ground floor commercial within the downtown area that may be even more challenging for the market to achieve. So there are state and federal incentives for affordable housing and increasingly for workforce housing as well. So Affordable tends to be for low and very low income, but workforce is, like it says, workforce income levels. And those kind of incentives, the state and federal incentives, can help move development from infeasible to feasible beyond where the market is able to do. So perhaps a development offering that is targeted at nonprofit partners that can be bundled together with local incentives, primarily to help achieve those ground floor commercial ambitions, but perhaps also to achieve some of the brownfield remediation needs of the site, or on and off street improvement, on and off site improvement costs, infrastructure improvement costs. All those things have to be bundled together into a development offering. So we've laid out a 5-step process for development offerings. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds on this, but just to say that there is a recipe to navigate a public-private partnership through a development offering process that has several key ingredients. So there is some upfront work that you have to do to clearly define the needs and the goals, right? What are you trying to achieve? What are the nice to have things that you'd like to see, but what are the must haves that you really have to see? So perhaps mixed use is a must have, but perhaps the city's flexible on the price points or the incomes that the residential unit needs to serve, things like that. Decide on your must-haves, your nice-to-haves. Decide how you're going to pick a development partner, right? So what are the evaluation criteria that you're going to use in order to select a partnership? Perform some due diligence. Due diligence is a word that basically means know what your site is all about. Understand the major issues that someone is going to have to confront when they redevelop a site, so that you can be honest and transparent with a development partner. These kind of sites that have community benefits associated with them are some of the most complex real estate deals that can get pulled off. And so you want to be as honest and upfront about what are the issues that have to be overcome with a site out of the gate. And that transparency will go a long way with finding and building trust with a partner. And then you get to a development offering. A development offering is really a marketing process. It is it's either a website or a brochure or a fancy email blast or all the above, press releases that help to tell in as succinct and compelling a way the story of a site and the story of the city's ambitions, development ambitions for that site, to try and catch the attention and get the interest of potential development partners, private, nonprofit, or both. So it's a marketing process, a development offering. There's a solicitation. So there's a public solicitation that can involve a lot of in-person marketing meetings. So these projects oftentimes, development partners will have a ton of questions. So you want to be available to ask those questions, provide as much information as possible and as easy a way to understand it as possible. Use email and social media, traditional media, trade media, and then do site tours. Really, you're trying to get people invested in and excited about partnering with you on the development goals that you have. And that's not easy to do. Developers are very busy. Nonprofit developers are incredibly busy. So getting their attention and keeping their attention is difficult. And it's important to be pretty aggressive on this marketing. So you also want to be clear about how you're going to evaluate. So does the proposal that's submitted by a development partner, does it have a compelling vision that resonates with what you've stated are your objectives? Do they have the relevant experience? Just because they've told you what you want to hear, but do they actually have the experience to pull it off? Does it achieve the outcomes that you want? Is it mixed income or mixed use? Does it have considerations of design quality and assurance of construction quality? Does the development partner have the financial wherewithal to pull it off? And how have they demonstrated that? Have they provided references that you can call and understand what kind of a development partner they're likely to be? So being clear about how you're going to evaluate these things. And then ultimately, if you are successful in selecting someone who will be a strong partner, preparing to negotiate a formal agreement. An agreement establishes what the city agrees to do and what the development partner agrees to do, lays out measurable timelines, and firms up commitments on both from both parties. The city has a set of obligations, maybe including some incentives, and the development partner has a set of milestones they have to achieve in order to unlock the site and its development potential. So in summary, we've talked about a lot of things. I know there's a lot of ideas. There's a whole tool belt that we hope that in our experience, cities that understand that there's no silver bullets and that they have to implement a multi-pronged strategy to truly unlock the potential of their downtowns are the most successful. So understanding those arenas, they can be within the policy realm. We've identified several of those. But it really comes down to aligning the regulations, what you can build, with what you want to see. So aligning your regulations with your vision. Placemaking, creating those really vibrant and engaging physical environments. We all know when we're in a special place. We all have those experiences when you're in a downtown or a neighborhood that is clearly special and has made the investments necessary to give it its own identity and special character. And there are parts of the downtown that have that. And when we've building on that specialness through additional placemaking investments will be critical to sort of growing the success of downtown over the larger study area. Incentives, right? Where the market can't do what you want today, providing incentives to nudge it along, overcome some of the hurdles that exist in the market today and get you where you want it, the outcomes you want faster is a tried and true method. And then where you have specific sites that you want to see outcomes happen on, focusing a development offering process to achieve public-private partnership ambitions on those sites is a tried and true method for a public sector to sort of be involved in the development process and find partners that align with your vision and help you achieve built outcomes on a specific site. So a holistic strategy is really the key to raising the feasibility generally across the district and ensuring both the near-term and the long-term vitality of this waterfront district as a whole. And that concludes our presentation. I don't know exactly who to hand the baton to, but
So if you can remove your screen, I'll go ahead and share mine. So this is the question and answer function, and I think we have someone else who's prepared to take on the first slide of questions.
Alex, did you want to take kind of the question one and
sure.
One and
Yeah,
I think it's 1
absolutely.
and 3?
One and three. Okay.
Wait, sorry. You can just do one. I think they got combined into one question.
Okay, gotcha. So it says rather than 5 stories on the waterfront, can it only be 3 stories? Well, it can really be whatever the community wants, but I think the important thing is that limiting height to 3 stories comes with trade-offs. And some of those trade-offs we've talked about tonight, which are that 3-story buildings are not nearly as cost-effective as 5-story buildings. And so you may be less likely to get the types of new mixed-use projects and developments in the downtown area, as opposed to allowing for a very more cost-effective 5-story building. So, zoning decisions are a local decision, but really being clear about what it means to limit height to 3 stories and how it may end up restricting the types of mixed-use development in your downtown are important to understand, important trade-offs. Do you want me to take the second one there, Allison?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So how can customer foot traffic be increased to downtown Pioneer Way area businesses? We talked a little bit about this, and I think the city is right to focus on trying to achieve, mixed use in the downtown where residences live above new businesses as well. That as we shared, is a challenging building type in today's market. So few of the other strategies we talked about really can have the effect of increasing customer foot traffic. So those would be, allowing for a wider range of housing types and more housing within the neighborhoods that surround downtown to grow the greater downtown population over time. Can add, residences are the best customers. They're there most of the year and most of the 24-hour period. So they tend to be the best customers you can get. And so growing more housing opportunities in and around downtown is an important strategy. But then also improving the ways that those surrounding neighborhoods get to downtown and how people move through downtown. So improving the pedestrian environment. If foot traffic relies on places for those feet to go and for those feet to feel comfortable. And so, improving the pedestrian environment downtown is critical. And last, for visitors who come by car, making sure that the city has a really robust parking management strategy and is trying to squeeze every last parking space they can in efficiently in and around downtown, and then manage that. Parking is a resource that benefits the downtown neighborhood, but also the downtown businesses. And so managing that parking to make sure that it's used efficiently is important. So those are 3 strategies for improving customer foot traffic downtown.
I can take the next 2 questions, Alex. So
Great.
The next question is, can a master plan for aesthetics or look and feel be developed and enforced for the waterfront area? I think this can be done through 2 different ways. The first way is creating a plan for the public realm, particularly streets and street standards that the city can put into place of, what are going to be the allowed pedestrian scaled lighting? What is that going to look like? What will signage look like? Wayfinding? What will our local benches or bike racks look like? And how will we require development to adhere to those standards if they're constructing some of the local street improvements as part of their development proposal? So that's sort of one option. And then secondly, the city can certainly put design standards in place for private development or buildings if they aren't already in place within the downtown area. And this helps to create consistency with architectural style. But the city should really use caution with design standards, as Alex mentioned, kind of in part of the policy recommendations, that we don't want to make design standards overly burdensome, unclear, unobjective, and provide hurdles for development or create a significant amount of added cost that makes a project infeasible due to those design standards. So there's a delicate balance between focusing your design standards on things that really will, that are community priorities that enhance the overall look and feel, while not making them too burdensome that it limits development from even taking place at all. And then the next question, what resources can be offered to existing businesses to help them survive and compete during and after redevelopment? So this likely includes both business support during construction, and this could, like, for example, during a street redevelopment project, there's significant impacts to local businesses. We see a lot of cities will host sort of, open during construction campaigns. During those timelines, they can support businesses by doing a lot of social media posts, partnering with businesses by giving them really clear information and timelines on expected impacts of those construction impacts, so that businesses can set up their own sort of incentive program to encourage folks to keep coming to the business during that construction period, which can be really challenging. But there's also what happens after redevelopment, after both, construction projects within the streets, but also adjacent redevelopment occurs to support local businesses. And those can be done through, oftentimes we see cities adopt storefront improvement grant programs. And those can be funded either through state programs, Main Street program and grants, or through the establishment of a business improvement district, which is technically a tax on businesses, but then you can pool those funds together to then support businesses within the district that may need a little bit more support during some of these changes.
And I don't think, David, we're really in a position to answer the last two questions, so I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you. This question, has there been any consideration of adding a boardwalk to the redevelopment plan? And I can't say about the redevelopment plan, but I know Councilman Wiesner has been promoting a boardwalk down there right along Bayshore. And we always thought it was a great idea, great location for that. There could be some environmental considerations that would take some time to work through, but that's a great idea, a great question someone came up with. Next question, will roundabouts on Highway 20 be put in prior to any redevelopment of downtown and the waterfront? So the roundabout that everybody is familiar with is the roundabout at Highway 20 and Pioneer, which is considered the gateway to the downtown. And it's that same area that we talked about that would go from possibly 4 lanes down to 2 lanes on Pioneer and create a more walkable area. The roundabout that would be proposed for that location, it would be done by the Washington Department of Transportation, and that is a few years out, but it is coming. So that is going to happen. As we've talked a little bit tonight, it's all a process. There's a lot of different steps to redevelopment. And so it's incremental, a lot of different things happening at different times. And so there probably would be some redevelopment of downtown that would occur before the roundabout goes in. Some of the pop-up plazas and the other activities that Allison mentioned earlier, those are things that we could start right now. Next page of questions. This is a lengthy question someone had, but it's a good one. It says, I want the density envisioned. I actually want more than what has been presented. But I worry if it is done all at once, then it will be artificial and not in tune with the rest of the city. If it is broken up into sufficiently small steps with appropriately reassessment and planning in between, then I think it will lead to a healthy organic whole. So my clear concern question I want to really see here is how many steps over how many years would this unfold? So my answer to that is, years ago, I was in a place called Tempe, Arizona, which is where Arizona State University is. And I was at a redevelopment conference where they were celebrating a lot of their redevelopment success stories. And this was in the late 90s. So they started in the early 70s to start redeveloping in Tempe. And they all stood around looking at all the nice buildings and the new things that they'd done and all the activity centers. And the joke that they had in those days was it takes 20 years to be an overnight success in redevelopment. So it's a long-term play, and certainly it'll be broken up into many steps. So I think you can rest assured it'll be a very steady process. Next question, how will the increased density affect traffic? Well, there certainly will be more traffic, and we certainly hope there's more traffic, more people driving and walking. We're anticipating that with more traffic and more density, you might see more bicycle transportation options. You might see more pedestrian transportation options. You might see more people using island transit, where you don't have quite enough parking or traffic's a little busier. You might see those other options take place. So I think that's probably a positive reflection of having higher density downtown. And when we do have higher density or development, we'll have traffic mitigation studies that are done, and it will take time to go through those. And once we get through those studies as part of development, there'll be different mitigation factors that are put in place. Question is, where will all the tenants park? Concrete parking structures are probably not economically feasible. Well, concrete parking structures are expensive. That is correct. There are some developers who develop structured parking as part of their mixed-use projects, as well as multifamily housing units. Sometimes higher rents are justified with structured parking. Sometimes property managers charge for parking spaces that are used with multifamily housing. I've seen that in various communities in the Puget Sound. So this equates to you pay for what you use concept. This might force people to keep one car and give up the other. Public transportation might be utilized in this situation, which would help reduce traffic congestion. So some places they might charge a couple $100 a month for a parking space in a structured parking unit. So that's really up to the development community to tell us what they want and what they see. Let's see. The city of Oak Harbor should look at upzoning density in hubs based on localized utility and transportation capacity. So I think the question is asking in hubs, which are also known as nodes. This crosses over into our comprehensive planning effort, where we're talking about further out from downtown, creating some nodes. It might be located somewhere along a collector road or a maybe even an arterial road at the intersection somewhere where you could have a little higher density and have the capacity for better transit and different techniques in land use planning. So that could be transferred to downtown as well. So certainly a good question and something that we are pursuing. Last question on this sheet is the intent to require a minimum density that essentially mandates 4 to 5 story building? I don't know that we've considered minimum densities here. Sometimes minimum densities are in places where they're trying to put as much density as they possibly can everywhere. And we don't have a minimum density in mind, so we would leave it to the private marketplace really to make density determinations as part of development. So the plan is being put together right now, and the recommendations that emerge from these consultants that we've seen tonight can certainly add to the areas with taller buildings. Both the horizontal mixed use and the vertical mixed use are solutions. So as stated before, with taller buildings in the CBD, along with the requirement to add public benefit features to these buildings, such as the need for design review improvements, those are techniques that we use to create a better place and a little higher density. So we will need to review the recommendations that emerge from the final report. And as far as next steps go, we really haven't talked about that with the consultants, but maybe a sub-area plan or a specific plan could be put in place to incorporate all the recommendations that the consultants have come up with. So last slide, I don't think we've chosen who is going to take these questions on, so I'll let anyone who has a ready answer jump in there. I think the first question is, please show how pedestrian access and public transportation will continue to be integral parts of the project's life cycle. So definitely, we've talked a little bit tonight about public transportation and all the pedestrian areas down on the West Pioneer area, as well as the East Pioneer area. And so we think that certainly could have a lot of big public benefits.
Related to the second bullet, which is how can this, please show how this project is fundamentally related to the city of Oak Harbor's ability to roll out more affordable housing. So how can this plan and the actions associated with this planning work help the city achieve affordable housing objectives? We ended the presentation with a focus on that, which is really public-private partnerships. So the city partnering with development partners, probably nonprofit development partners on city-owned sites, for instance, can be is a common strategy for cities to help advance affordable housing and affordable development desires. So pursuing understanding what sites are available and pursuing public-private partnerships with those intended outcomes would be one recommendation there.
And then I think the third question, how can the final designs of the overall project be developed without losing the look and feel of Oak Harbor? This is similar to a question that we answered previously about how to create kind of a master plan for aesthetics or look and feel within the area. And that can be done both through public realm design standards, as well as design standards in place for buildings through the city's development code. But again, kind of finding that right balance between not identifying overly burdensome design standards, but some that are really advancing the community's goals and priorities. And then the question that's sort of after the comment on increasing Highway 20 to 4 lanes, how do we generate more foot traffic? This is also similar to a question that we answered on the first slide of really identifying ways to make the area a better place to walk, how to incentivize and allow more people to live within the district and nearby the district, and creating proactive parking management strategies for the waterfront. And then I think the last question we also answered a similar question to that of how to support businesses both during and after construction and redevelopment.
Yeah, that's a good point, Allison. Your last question there was answered earlier, I think, with the tax increment financing, maybe some facade improvement programs that could be done for existing downtown businesses to help them continue to grow while new development is occurring. So these are good questions that are tailor-made to the project that you're working on. So we also have the opportunity for anyone to provide feedback for us and also ask any additional questions you might have. So that's still open. Here's a site for you to go to, and I'll leave this up for a few seconds so that you can go ahead and make sure you have that. We certainly welcome everyone's comments. They've been really spot on, and really appreciate all the work the consultants have done, as well as the people who are online today, making sure you're part of this. And feel free to reach out anytime to any of us and with any questions you might have. I think after this is a point of closure, perhaps with Claire is going to wrap it up.
Actually, David, I'll jump in here and close
Okay,
it out.
right. Lou Jane is going to do that. Okay.
Thank you, David. So hi, everyone. My name is Lou Jane Altawara, and like Claire, I'm with the Center for Creative Land Recycling, the nonprofit who has been partnering with the city. I have the pleasure of closing out tonight's virtual workshop. So just to echo David's sentiments, thank you all for being here. A special thank you to Cascadia for such a wonderful presentation, and of course, to the City of Oak Harbor for your time, energy, and just collaboration throughout this entire project. It's really been, honestly, a pleasure working with the city staff, being able to visit Oak Harbor, and also getting to meet many of you and speak with the community residents during our first 2 workshops. And I also want to give a quick shout out to our team member, Norman Wright, who couldn't be with us today, but has been honestly so instrumental in moving this project forward and making it happen. So Norm, thank you very much for all of your hard work and dedication. And then just to close off and kind of summarize, over the past few months, we've worked together to really shape a shared vision for Oak Harbor's waterfront and downtown district, one that we hope will end up really reflecting your values, your priorities, and your hopes for the future. From our first workshop to today, the 3rd and final workshop, your voices have really turned these big ideas into hopefully practical steps for community-driven revitalization, and we'll be sure to share that final report with the community once it's been developed. And we're really excited to see how this momentum carries forward. And also just a reminder that this really isn't the end. It's honestly just the beginning of this redevelopment project. Like David mentioned, please continue to reach out to any of us with more feedback, more questions, comments regarding the redevelopment, and just really trying to and we really just want to emphasize that your ideas are helping lay the groundwork for what comes next, whether that's the city applying for funding, bringing in new partners, or taking the first steps towards continuing redevelopment. So we're really committed to continuing this journey with you, and your involvement, your community involvement really does make the difference. So thank you again, and we're looking forward to seeing how this all plays out. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.